Alright, hello everyone, it's Ferric, and in this video, I'm going to be giving you an in-depth breakdown of the new pin socketing system in Wizard101 with the fall 2022 Novus test realm. Now, while I won't be talking about where to get the pins in this video, I do plan on making a complete Novus farming and crafting guide sometime later, either in test realm or when the update hits live realm. Now, without further delay, welcome to the Wizard101 pin socketing guide. Now, on first glance, when you open up your Jewels tab by pressing Y, you'll notice that on top of the 5 regular shapes of jewels that we're used to, we have 3 new things right here: power pins, shield pins, and sword pins. Now, on the surface, these items do work similarly to jewels, except instead of being on your wand, your athame, amulet, ring, pet, and deck, it will instead be on your hat, robe, and boots. If we actually go over here to Luis Gurriel Altuve, man, I love his name. If you click on him, he sells the recipes for the new gear, for all pieces of the new gear. And if we actually check the hat, robe, and boots, you'll notice that you do have those new pin sockets on the gear. And in general, these are available on level 160 plus pieces of gear, which is the new level cap for Novus. It does not appear that you need to unlock any pin slots on these 3 pieces of gears, unlike with jewels, where you do have to either use a socket wrench or crowns to unlock them. So if I go over here, go to affix jewels, these are locked sockets. To unlock them, I would either have to use a legendary socket wrench, and that depends on what level the piece of gear is. You have to use a different tier socket wrench, or you have to use a certain amount of crowns, again depending on what level band the piece of gear is. Also, on top of that, if we go over to our pins tab, if I hover over any of these pins, you'll notice that it has the no shatter symbol on it. And what that means is, unlike with jewels, when you remove these from the pieces of gear, you will not destroy the pin. With jewels, if I actually go here to a piece of gear, like for example, I'll just use this because this is test realm, I do not care about the jewels. If I want to remove this jewel, I'd have to shatter it, and it permanently destroys the health opal, and I can't get it back. But the way the thing works now is, if I actually go to a pet that I have, this pet's a good example. This pet has a special Maycast unicorn socketed on it that has that no shatter tag. So if I just unsocket it, it just removes it and returns it to my inventory. So the pin sockets work the same way. The other thing that makes pins very different from jewels is that you can't socket stats to benefit your own school with them, and I'll explain exactly how that works. Let's take a look at the new gear from the New World Novus. As you can see, this gear uses the same damage 1, resist 2, utility 3 gear template that was used on the merciless gear from the previous world, Lemuria, except since this is 10 levels higher, every single stat on the gear is upgraded from the previous year. Every stat, except the one thing you might notice that is missing, is the dual school storm damage and pierce that's no longer there on the new gear. This is exactly what these pins are designed for. Instead of the game completely choosing a school for you for secondary stats, you can use pins to actually customize your gear, which gives you even more options with the new gear template system. For those of you confused on how the different gear templates work since they started adding them in the 2022 spring update, I will be making an in-depth guide on that as well. But for now, this information is explained by the devs in my last gear roundtable with them. I highly recommend checking that out. Links can be found in the description down below. Based on this information, it should be obvious that pins are an optional stat and not required. If you want to hit with a second school, you can do that while keeping your own school stats with your current gear, but you do not have to use the system. Regular PvE, it's not super difficult, so you probably won't see a huge benefit in dual schooling, but other more advanced game modes such as PvP, raids, and even the advanced combat that they've been teasing for a while now could benefit from both the gear system and these new pins with dual schooling. Now, what stats does each pin type represent? Well, for starters, you have the power pins. These represent the secondary school utility stats from the gear templates. If we actually go to a hat, for example, this is the Merciless Death Cap. Once again, utility is the lowest stat on this, but if we compare it to a utility 1 piece of gear, like the Deathly Chronicle of the Void, this gives me more power pip chance and accuracy, and that's because utility stats are things like power pips, accuracy, and pip conversion. Now, 2 of those 3 things can be school-specific things. Those would be accuracy and pip conversion. So that is why for your power pins, which are related to utility stats, you can either get accurate pins, which give school-specific accuracy, or conversion pins, which give school-specific pip conversion. Real quick, you might notice that I have what is a level 80 storm accuracy pin, but this is the highest storm accuracy you would be able to get from a single pin for the Death School, and the pins are still meant for level 160 plus pieces of gear. As far as I've been told, the level 80 thing is just automatically generated by comparing the accuracy number to lower level gear, and since this is test realm, the loot tables also have not been completely finalized either. You should only be getting pins dropped to you that are socketable by your school. As you can see, I got something here that says Myth School only, but once they're finalized, I should only be getting things that I can actually socket on a Death Wizard if I'm farming on a Death Wizard. And once again, you get pins that give stats for everything other than your own school, so you do have a choice in what school you want to dual school with, instead of being forced to stick with whatever they choose for you. Now, I haven't done a crazy amount of farming, so I don't have all the pins to show you in my inventory, but I will throw up screenshots of pins that I don't have. Next up, we have sword pins. Just like with power pins, you can get stats for any school except your own, so once again, you have options with what school you actually want to dual school with. Sword pins are based off of the damage or DPS stats from the gear templates, which include damage, critical rating, and pierce. Because all of those are school-specific stats, there are pins for all three types, and instead of having them all separated, they come in pairs. You can get punishing pins, which give damage and pierce, crushing pins, which give pierce and critical rating, and also disabling pins, which give critical rating and damage. Now, I did say earlier with power pins that the game auto-generates the level requirement for some of them, but if you get a level 140 or level 150 pin, that is considered a miss, meaning there is actually a better level 160 version of that pin if you want the extra stats. Lastly, we have shield pins. Now, unlike the previous two pins, you cannot socket these for just any of the 6 other schools. Instead, recall the Rochambeau wheel. As you can see, each school counters 2 other schools and is also countered by 2 other schools. The main 2 shield pins will only give you the dual school stats for the 2 schools you counter on the Rochambeau wheel. What this means for me on this Death Wizard is that I will only get the stats that shield against Storm and Life. Shield pins are for things that are considered defensive stats on the gear templates, like health, block, and resist. Normally, all 3 of these can be universal stats, but health can only be a universal stat, so these pins will not give health, but they will give school-specific resist or block rating to those 2 schools that you counter on that Rochambeau wheel. Those are blocking pins, which give critical block rating, and resist pins, which give a certain amount of resist to a school. Now, there is one other type of shield pin that I am leaving for last, and that is because it is the one irregular type of pin, which is the Mending Pin, and it gives outgoing heal boost. Now, this pin is only available for balance, fire, and storm. The reason for this is because with the Rochambeau wheel, you have synergy with the school in front and behind you. So storm and fire both synergize with life, and because of that, heals are technically a part of their identity. Balance gets it because they're technically a school that takes a little bit of everything from other schools, so these are the 3 schools that have mending pins. Another reason I'm considering these pins irregular pins is because outgoing heal boost is typically considered a utility stat, but the shield pin is a defensive pin that typically takes defensive stats, so it is irregular in that sense. Now here I am on my balance showing you the balanced Conical of the Void, which is from the Raid Void set, which is a utility 1, defense 2, damage 3 set. And if I compare it to the Merciless right here, as you can see, it gives more power pips and accuracy than this other low utility template, and it also gives outgoing heal boost because that's a utility stat. Hopefully I have not lost all of you up until this point. If you have made it this far in the video, comment down below, I am Novus. There's just one more thing to talk about with respect to pins, and we will be done for today, I promise. And that is the total number of pins you can socket, as well as how they're distributed. Let's go over here and once again talk to Luis Gurriel Altuve. Man, I just love saying his name over and over again. It's just an awesome name. Once again, pins are going to be on your hat, robe, and boots, and if you actually hover over them, there's going to be 3 total pins on each piece of gear for a total of 9 pins. Now, the way these are distributed, and pay attention here really quick because this is where things get very technical and complicated. So 6 of those 9 slots are guaranteed, and 4 of those 6 are going to be sword pins, and 2 of them are going to be power pins. And the way it works is those are distributed across all 3 pieces, all those 6 pins. And the way it works is the hat of those 6 pins, the hat is going to have 2 sword pins. So those bottom 2 pins that you see here are going to be on every hat regardless of what template it is, because the hat will always have 2 sword pins. The robe, if I go here, will always have a power and a sword pin for these 2 bottom. Every single template, once again, will have a power and sword here on the bottom. And then the boots also has a power and a sword. So that's 4 sword pins and 2 power pins guaranteed regardless of template, and that's how they are distributed. Now, the top pin slot, that one depends on what the gear template is. Once again, I'm going to say this solely so that I don't confuse myself. It's based on gear template. 3 slots based on gear template, distributed across all of them. 2 of those 3 will go to the primary stat on the gear template, and 1 will be a pin based off of the secondary stat on the gear template. And there's even more standardization with how it works, because this 3rd slot on the hat can only be a shield or a power pin. So in this case, because this is a damage 1 resist 2 template, we get the shield because power is a tertiary stat. So this could not be a power thing. And because sword is not one of the possible things you can have on a hat, we're going to get a shield template for the damage 1 resist 2 utility 3 hat. For the robe, the way it works is the robe can only be a sword or a power pin for the top slot there. This is once again damage 1 defense 2 utility 3. We know that it cannot be power because the tertiary thing cannot be the 3rd slot, so it has to be a sword pin at the top. And then finally for the boots is going to be either a shield or a sword pin at the top. So this gear template is once again damage 1, defense 2, utility 3, but because the hat already has our shield pin on the top and we can only have 1 shield pin, that means the boots have to be sword. So that's how the pins are distributed. I hope that made sense. Basically, with this information, if you can understand that, you will be able to know exactly what pin slots will be on a specific piece of gear for a specific template if you understand how those systems work. And the advantage of that is if you may not have to spend extra time farming for a piece of gear to find out what stuff is on it. Obviously, you'll probably end up seeing, when you see the full stats of the gear, it's going to include the pin sockets anyways, but you can just predict, what kind of pin sockets you'll see basically. Anyways, this concludes the pin socketing guide. I hope that last part was okay. I hope I didn't do an awful job explaining it. But anyways, this video was a ton of fun for me to make, and I would like to give a massive shout out to everyone in the ferric Discord server who posted everything they found out about this test drum in the test drum channel, and specifically Mystery. You may know him as Wolf Waterfinder in game. He spent a lot of time this week figuring out what different things drop, where they drop from. So if you see him in game, be sure to thank him. And once again, if you want to join the amazing community, the Discord server is down in the description below. Now, if there were things you did not understand in the video, for example, the gear template system, I would suggest watching the roundtable discussion that I previously had with the developers about how it works. And I'm also happy to answer any questions you have in the comments down below, so make sure to leave them. And I will also be making a video guide specifically on how all that works, so if you want to be notified of that, make sure to hit the subscribe button and bell icon to receive notifications. I will also be posting other guides on Novus as well, so stay tuned for that as well. If you found this video helpful in any way, be sure to leave a thumbs up. If you didn't like it, let me know down below as well. I appreciate all feedback. Anyways, thank you all so much for staying up until this point. Stay safe, enjoy the game, and as always, good evening.